All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this balanced weather video. I thought it would be a fun and good idea to do a little on-the-fly, off-the-cuff briefing, considering this situation we have in the tropics with Humberto and what will likely soon be Imelda is a very complex situation with a lot of uncertainty, and I figure it might be easier to just explain some of this and show it rather than try to write about it. So we're just going to go ahead and get going. So we're starting off here with an infrared picture of the Atlantic satellite, the Atlantic basin. And you can pretty quickly see the two big features of interest where my cursor is here. You can see Hurricane Humberto spinning here in the central Atlantic. It's been intensifying quite significantly this afternoon and evening. I'll focus in on that here in a minute. We have what was Invest 94L and is now having advisories issued by the National Hurricane Center as Potential Tropical Cyclone 9. This is what's going to probably become Imelda, and it looks like it's getting better organized this evening. And then another main feature I want to point out here is this cloud mass over the southeast United States and the Gulf of Mexico. This is the upper level trough of low pressure that I've been talking about in the Substack posts the last several days, and this is going to play a key part in steering, especially 94L, PTC9, Imelda, whatever you want to call it here, over the next several days, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So I want to zoom in first. We can get a zoom in here as much as we can on the two tropical systems. So first, you can see here, Humberto has really been getting much better organized this evening. It's already a major hurricane on the most recent advisory from the National Hurricane Center with maximum sustained winds of 115 miles an hour. And you can see here some of the features that we really look for with an intensifying hurricane. You can see the eye. It's very well defined on the infrared. This is an infrared satellite picture. It's well defined, and you can see these bright, cold cloud tops from intense thunderstorms wrapping around it. I wanted to show here the wrong window. One of the things that one of the tools we have to look at for these hurricanes is the Dvorak technique, which is essentially many years ago, a satellite meteorologist named Dvorak developed this correlation technique, basically where satellite meteorologists could match features they were observing on satellite to the various intensity levels of tropical storms and hurricanes. And it is amazing how accurate Dvorak's technique is. It always amazes me when the first reconnaissance flight gets into a tropical storm or a hurricane, and how often the satellite estimates are, nail the actual observed intensity. So you can see here, this is an automated version of the Dvorak technique that NOAA operates. There's two different versions here. There's the traditional ADT automated Dvorak technique, and now there's a new artificial intelligence version of it. But you can see that both of them have been steadily increasing here, and this is showing the maximum winds that the Dvorak technique is estimating on Humberto, and it's somewhere in the 115 to 120 knot range. So it's very likely that on the next advisory from the Hurricane Center, this is going to be approaching or at a Category 4 on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. So this is obviously a very impressive hurricane. If we turn now to our other system, and I'm going to actually zoom in on this a little more. This is what was Invest 94L, now Potential Tropical Cyclone 9, and you can see that there's some really intense thunderstorm activity developing here between the northeast coast of Cuba and the southeast Bahamas. And if we switch from the regular infrared satellite image to the shortwave infrared, you can kind of see a little better in here that there is some turning in the clouds, indicating that there's probably a circulation that we just can't see very well at night under these thunderstorm cloud tops. So it seems pretty clear that this system is getting better organized and is likely going to become a full tropical cyclone, either a depression or a tropical storm, in the next 24 hours, and it's going to continue to move kind of west-northwest overnight, but it should start to move more toward the northwest and north tomorrow. So if we look at the steering mechanisms that are guiding these two tropical systems, I'm going to look here at 300 millibars, which is about 30 to 35,000 feet above ground level. And what I'm looking at here is height, which is essentially like pressure on a regular surface weather map. And then the barbs and the image are winds. The barbs are direction and speed. The image is what we call isotax. So essentially the wind speed in a graphic form. And you can see here, there are two real key features as far as steering the tropical cyclones. There's a large area of high pressure centered here near Bermuda currently. And there's this trough of low pressure, which we can also see in the satellite. Let me go back to that. This area of cloudiness here across the Carolinas down into the Gulf of Mexico. That's essentially thunderstorm and moisture associated with this upper level trough. And so if we look at essentially what we have here is we have this trough of low pressure that's extending down from the Ohio Valley down into the Gulf of Mexico, and then we have this high pressure center over Bermuda. So I'm going to grab my dog here. Hold on. Come here. So essentially, we have these two features are being steered, these two tropical systems are being steered by these, primarily by these two features. Humberto is down here to the south of the upper level high pressure center over Bermuda, and it's basically just going to rotate around that, moving west-northwest, then northwest, and eventually turn more north and northeast. Whereas what's going to be Imelda is kind of stuck in here between this upper level high to its northeast and this upper level low pressure area to its northwest. And what makes it even more complex, well, there's two things that make it more complex. Number one, the upper level trough is going to be weakening and pulling off to the northeast over the next couple of days. This is the forecast by Sunday afternoon, and you can see that this trough has gotten much weaker. The wind flow around it has gotten much weaker. And you also have Humberto out here, which is modifying the overall atmosphere itself. So we have all of this complexity And the models are struggling to try to figure out, okay, with all of these different chess pieces moving, how is that going to affect what is going to be Imelda? And the first difficulty with that is figuring out where Imelda is going to form. And if we look at a forecast just, say 36 hours from now, this is the European ensemble from this morning. It runs the model 50 different times with slight perturbations, and that enables it to come up with slightly different scenarios accounting for potential error in the model initialization data. And you can see here that even just by 36 hours from now, there is a tremendous spread in where the low pressure center associated with this might be, anywhere from the northern Bahamas down to south of Cuba. And that's where a lot of the initial uncertainty with this system exists, is just figuring out where is it really going to consolidate and form. And then once it consolidates, how quickly will it start to feel the effects of that upper level trough of low pressure and start to move to the north. And if we go out here further in time, say by Monday morning, you can see the spread by that time is huge. The 50 members of the European ensemble have the low anywhere from already off the Carolina coast to still being down somewhere in the central Bahamas. So when you have that kind of a long track spread where the low itself could be anywhere over several hundred kilometers of distance, and the speed of motion could be wildly different, the speed of forward motion could be wildly different, and the intensity of the storm could be different. It's really hard with all of that uncertainty combined with the uncertainty around the upper level low pressure area and Humberto to the east to really have a very good idea of how this is all going to play out. But essentially there seems to be, I would say, three most likely scenarios. The first is with this cluster you can kind of see here moving up into the Carolinas on Tuesday. And that would essentially be that the system develops into a strong tropical storm or hurricane and moves far enough to the north over the next few days that it gets caught up with the upper level low pressure area and ends up moving inland into the Carolinas. So that's kind of scenario number one. Scenario number two is that it doesn't even make it much farther north of, say, east central, off the coast of east central or northeast Florida, and because of that, there's a weakness that's left behind in the upper level flow from Humberto, and Imelda just essentially follows along behind it. And you can see that this is that cluster of lows that you can see here that's basically moving east out of the cluster off the coast of Florida, and now is moving east toward Bermuda. Then the third scenario is essentially that some lows just completely stall out either right along the coast or just offshore and sit there for a few days, and then eventually turn and move either inland or potentially even up the East Coast. A couple of members do that. That's kind of scenario number three, where it just sits there for 2 or 3 days, either just inland or just off the coast, and then does some sort of a loop. And in fact, if we switch to the AI version of the European model, that is pretty much exactly what it does on its most recent run. It essentially Get it up here. It essentially develops the low, moves it slowly along the east coast of Florida into the early and middle part of next week. And then as Humberto lifts out, it just kind of gets left behind and it just sits there and spins, kind of drifts east for a few days. And then as the flow in the upper levels changes, it gets caught back up, starts moving northwest, and actually eventually moves into the mid-Atlantic. So those are kind of the three scenarios. Just to recap again, system moves quick enough that it gets caught up with the upper level low and moves inland into the Carolinas sometime early next week. Scenario number two is it's very slow and it doesn't make it far enough to get caught up in that flow, and it actually turns northeast in the general direction of Bermuda, following behind Humberto. And then scenario three is it stalls off out somewhere along the coast, either just inland or just offshore, and potentially just sits there for a couple of days, drifts east, maybe makes a loop, and eventually moves back inland later. So still a lot of different scenarios. As the weekend goes on and we get clearer, a clearer view of where the center is congealing and really focusing its development. And also we continue to get a better idea of the upper level evolution going on around Humberto and Imelda, which should be this weekend. We'll really be able to see, the model should get a better handle on how this is all going to evolve and work together. And with time, we should get a better idea of which of these three scenarios is most likely to play out. But one thing I do want to emphasize is the rainfall potential with this setup. Just for illustration purposes, I'm going to bring up the again, this is the AI version of the European model. And you can see here now, this model, again, it has kind of scenario three where the system develops, comes up close to the coast, stalls out, does a loop, and then eventually goes into the mid-Atlantic like late in the week. So this is the amount of rainfall that it's showing with that kind of a scenario. And you can see the model is showing like 5 to 8 inches of rain here across eastern North Carolina and down along the coast of South Carolina. But you can also see here just offshore where the system stalls out, the model is producing 20 to 25 inches of rain. And so this is one of those situations where we have both a relatively low floor as far as rainfall, but we also have an extremely high ceiling as far as rainfall. If this system were to do scenario two, where it moves only to like off of the coast of Georgia or Florida, and then turns more east,
you do whatever you want.
There would still be some heavy rainfall going on along the Carolina coast because there's going to be moisture pulled up with the upper level trough, but it would probably be more of a low to moderate and flash flood risk. Whereas if the system actually moves inland, or worst case scenario, stalls somewhere along the coast or just inland from the coast, we could be looking at a major rainfall event, one of these 20 to 30 inch type rainfall events like we've seen with several stalling tropical cyclones over the last decade. So right now, way too early to know which one of these scenarios might play out, but it's certainly a a situation where people along the East Coast need to be continuing to monitor it, especially people in the Carolinas, where it seems like the most likely impacts are, but really anybody from Florida up the East Coast needs to at least be keeping an eye on this system. And obviously, the Bahamas are going to be impacted this weekend. And obviously, I also want to mention there's going to be potential impacts to Bermuda from Humberto. You know, right now it looks like Humberto is going to kind of make this wide loop around Bermuda to its north, to its west and northwest. Now that kind of a track, depending on how close it actually gets to Bermuda, could be rather impactful, because it would, if it's close enough to Bermuda, it could have the eastern side of the storm could be impacting the island for many, many hours. So the farther west of Bermuda it goes, the better. The farther east and closer it goes to Bermuda, and obviously the stronger, more intense it gets, larger it gets, the more impacts there will be for Bermuda. So we still got a few days to sort that all out, but obviously if you have interest on Bermuda, you should be watching what's going on with Humberto very closely, and you should be watching what's going on with what eventually becomes Imelda, because if the scenario 2 plays out where it moves more, where it turns east earlier and follows behind Humberto, Imelda could be impacting Bermuda as well. So that's what I've got on the tropics. I just wanted to finish out. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the, I wanted to show some MRMS data from some of the thunderstorm activity that they've had in the Southwest today. It's been a very active day around the Phoenix metro area. We've got Ken Howard, my former colleague from the National Severe Storms Lab, who lives out there, on the call today, and I know he's had a lot of very interesting weather in his neck of the woods today. I'm just going to show here quickly. You can see on this satellite loop that there's been persistent thunderstorm activity developing across the state through the day. And if we look at the reports, you can see there have been a number of wind damage and hail reports across the Phoenix metro area, as well as a number of flash flood reports. I know there were some hail up to at least quarter-sized in downtown Phoenix. Ken just said there in the chat that he's had over 2 inches of rain in 12 hours, which I know is the most rain he's had at his house. He lives on the east side of the Phoenix metro area. That's the most rain he's had at his house in one event in several years. So this has been a really, it's been, again, for the most part, up until the last couple of weeks, it's been a pretty quiet monsoon season in the Southwest, but they need the rain as always. So even though there's been some severe weather and obviously some flooding associated with this, the rainfall itself is welcome, even if the severe weather and flooding is not. So I'm going to wrap it up here, especially because I've got a dog on my lap who is giving me grief. Does anybody have anybody that's on the call have any questions before I wrap up? All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I probably will do 1 or 2 more of these this weekend, depending on how things evolve with the tropical situation. Hopefully this was helpful and worthwhile. And thanks to you all for being Balanced Weather subscribers and supporters. And have a great rest of the evening. We'll talk to you all soon.